Okay, folks, back to work on the P-40. We were working on it this morning. And even though today I feel like airbrushing, but we're not airbrushing. Let's get something accomplished, not start 50 things. So we're going to, let's get a new one of these so we don't have this distraction. And because we're going to be doing this for a little while. We can use a blue one. Yeah, a blue one doesn't hurt for this. We're going to use dark tone. We're not using the Tamiya panel liner that everybody raves about, and I'm not a huge fan of. I love Tamiya stuff, don't get me wrong, but I'm not really a fan of their paints anymore. And, well, we're just going to give this thing the treatment. So I'm actually going to start on the bottom. And I know I got to paint the wheel wells in green. I'll come back and do that later. Let's get some, let's do all the stuff that's on the gray part first. I'm not worried about covering up any detail on the wheel wells. There's a ton of detail on the wheel wells. I may actually regret doing this and go back to a white one in case I can't see the transparency on this. But I think we should be safe. Let's get a brush that we have some confidence in. Something like that. Oh, this is beautiful. And I'm not worried about I was going to say overspray. Just running down that panel line like crazy. And this is a water-based product. You don't have to use an enamel-based product. Because what we're going to do is, actually, if I really wanted to do it, I could do something like, let's see what happens. Actually, I have not done this once. We're going to be dry brushing the color back all over it. It's probably something that most people don't do, but that's how I paint tanks. That's how I'll be doing the planes. Oh, we got a bombardment of people. Oh, and I've got to do something before. Give me that thing a bath. Fart crafter. Are these for sale? No, these are for therapy. I laugh, but it's true, you know? Fart crafter. That's a great name, man. Cheers. What wash am I using? This one happens to be dark tone. What would you do with this? Like, if you bought this, what would you do with this? Would you tell other people, hey, look what I made? Don't bother doing that. You don't get any respect from most people. Like, yeah, whatever, you painted it. And then they go and do it, and people don't have the patience for it. This is the dark tone. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey here on this, because I think it's interesting as I put you all to sleep. The journey is, I heard no. I'm like, all right, I got to try this null oil stuff, right? And the null oil stuff, it just sounds like it's oil, like it's some enamel-based thing. It's not. It's just Games Workshop the dark black wash, right? So I get it, and I'm really happy with it, right? It's a little thinner than I wanted it to be, but that's fine because if you want an area thicker, just go over it again. It's non-toxic. You could probably drink a little bit of it and be all right if that's what you're into, but, you know, no smell, no fuss, nothing, right? Water cleanup. So then they reformulate it, and their container that's this big goes to smaller one, and it's a third more. I'm like, well, I still like this product. And then they changed the formula on it. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't work. It got all sticky and stuff. So I decided to try this War Master thing, which I am not a fan of their paints. I don't love how they behave. If Vallejo and everybody else that already does water-based paints stopped doing business and there was only War Master, we could get by, right? Army Painter stuff. But these Army Painter washes are incredible because it's better than that. And I tried the Tamiya one. I picked up the Tamiya. I'm a fan of Tamiya stuff, but that's an enamel-based thing. You got to cover the model in like an enamel spray and and a clear spray that's acrylic, so it doesn't damage your paint, and then wipe it off with mineral spirits. And I'm like, all right, well, that sounds like a pain in the ass. But if this stuff is just that great, let's give it a shot. And it wasn't. It was no better than Nuln Oil. So I decided to try this dark tone. This dark tone is amazing. It's darker. It's better than Nuln Oil. Now, you could basically take it straight from here or cut it down and it's more Nuln Oil-like. So I like the finagling where you get to kind of pick your consistency. Like I don't think there's any situation where I would have taken the Nuln Oil and made it thinner. But, in other words, make it more transparent. But to me, as mid, honestly, today's your birthday. Happy birthday, man. You got a car model build. I'm a fan of Tamiya stuff. You put a Tamiya model together and they just blow everybody else away. And just from the fit of it and the instructions, they show things from multiple angles. It's the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. You know, when you combine fit and finish and instructions, Tamiya's painting instructions on things, maybe not the best, because they basically ignore that there's any other paints in the universe. It's almost like Sony. Like, I was a big fan of like Sony TVs, cameras, and stuff like that. But Sony goes their own route. Like, we'll make batteries, but we'll make batteries that only ours works with. Well, which is fine, but it's kind of a pain in the butt, to do that. But to me, it's the same. They just ignore everybody else. Like, there's no other paint other than Tamiya paint. And I liked Tamiya paint way back in the day because you had Poly-S or you had Tamiya. It was the only water cleanup paint that there was. But now there's a million options. What kind of car model build are you doing? I would do cars except for one thing. And this is kind of a big deal for me. It is a very big deal. I am a scalist. The hell does that mean? Well, that means I'm really particular about what scale I do things in. For instance, I know some people that do tanks in 1/48th and tanks in 1/35th, and then they do planes in 48th, and ones in 32nd, but armor in 35th, and planes in 1/44th. I'm like, okay, stop, okay? Because the other thing is like you're all over the place. I'd like to think that this stuff that I'm doing I can use for wargaming somehow. This thing's on a runway, Japanese come, they got to get this plane off, something like that. And things are somewhat in scale with each other, so when somebody that you live with that maybe isn't really familiar with stuff, i.e. daughter/wife, they can kind of see, like, for instance, I'm surprised how big planes are compared to a tank. You put this plane, I don't think a P-40 is a really big plane, or a Messerschmitt. A Messerschmitt's not a big plane. It dwarfs a Tiger. Like, what? A Tiger's something huge. You got 5 guys. Well, they're basically, hugging each other all the time, even in that tank. You've got one guy that's just, he's enjoying all the the floor space. Well, I mean, it is in a tiny little casket too, but planes are big compared to tanks. And I guess they have to be for lift, but. So the problem with cars is, what scale do you do cars in? Because cars are like 124th, there's 125th, there's, the only car things I've done, and I am going to do more, because actually I've been inspired by some of you that come on here and I've showed you some of my cars and you're like, oh, that's cool. Because, I like to do all kinds of different stuff. And that is repainting Matchbox and Hot Wheels. And I've done a few. And it take a long time to do. But, they're worth it, Tidal wave. ... I guess it's just starting. Welcome. And that's 1/64. So that's close-ish enough, right? Wow, this stuff is. So I got the Tamiya one, used it. Didn't really think it was any better. So if it's not going to be any better, why cover the whole thing in gloss? It's just another step. I mean, I have a lot of steps the way I do things. There's no reason for me to be adding more steps. So we'll see. We'll do, and I also like using products that are available here in the area, because if I got to buy more, I don't have to, order everything. And all of this stuff is available here. Thank you. Really? Now we're going to get lightning when I'm doing my show. Well, we need rain. We don't need lightning. Sons of bitches. Let's see where we're sitting on. What kind of bombardment are we going to be under? There might be some. The show will go on. So if the feed dies abruptly, I've said this before, if the feed dies abruptly without me signing off, it was against my wishes for that to happen. And I've said this before, this may surprise some of you. I really enjoy this part. I don't know why. I don't enjoy I don't enjoy cleaning flash off things. But this part, and maybe it's because I'm making a conscious decision to put the wash there and not here. Maybe that's part of it, but I really do like this process. Justin, you're back from home. You're back from home early. You're back from work early. That's good. But with that said, I could, if I had to use Tamiya wash, I use Tamiya wash. I was expecting some miracle drug that was going to solve everything, and it wasn't that much better than the stuff I was using. And it's not better at all if I have to cover it in some kind of clear coat. Because even though it is an enamel, and it won't activate with these acrylics, it's harsh. It has some harsh chemicals in there that are hard on this acrylic, especially because the acrylic isn't very thick at all. I paint very thin. Clumsy Carton, another great name. What's up, man? That's a great handle, man. I had one guy the other day, he came in, I think his handle was Jeff or Mike or something like that. I'm like, man, you had to get in there early. You had to get in there early to get that name. I don't know if you could just change it to whatever you want on a whim, but if you can't, man, you need to jump on that kind of handle so you're not stuck with, Mike 748347 _4, or something like that. Oh, my favorite thing that people like to say, but I respond back in an Asian accent. What you doing? We are painting this P-40. And it doesn't look like much, but this is the first model, not this one, a much crummier model. Was the first model kit I ever built, probably 1982. 81, 82, something like that. No, wait a second. It was earlier than that. It was like 80 or 81, one of those two. Of course, I didn't paint it. The first model I tried to paint was an MPC Bismarck, also known as a rebranded Airfix. I didn't have any paints at the time. I had a paint by numbers set. People in the early 80s like to give people, oh, you're going to have a birthday party? We'll give them a paint by numbers set, which is oil paints, which is, not user friendly. Low quality oil paints. And it's the only paints I had. So the Bismarck was molded in gray. All right, so we left the gray parts gray. We're like, well, we got to paint the deck. So I wish I had pictures of that stuff because I could be like, "Urgh." But I probably used a yellow that was like this. I probably used a color like this for the deck to paint the whole deck on it. Poorly painted, no doubt, if I had to use those brushes it came with. Poorly painted. And then it's oil paints on plastic, so it took about 3 weeks to dry. I had it in my closet. I'd check on it every day to see if could mess with it. I think it was 3 weeks to dry. It might have only been 2 weeks. It took a long time to dry. It's raining. We needed the rain. Big time. So we talked about going to the hobby show in about a month. And my goal is going to be to get some Japanese stuff. I've never done Japanese stuff. Never really been into the Pacific War. So it's an opportunity to learn about. I actually watched. I saw an article that somebody used to paint something recently, and the guy said use the Tamiya stuff, and when you wipe off the liquid, wipe it off in the direction of air travel, so it gives you some free weathering. And I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. If I resort to using the Tamiya, which I don't think I'm going to. I've got lots of examples of this stuff working really well and not having to resort to the Tamiya. So I don't know why this wouldn't work in an aircraft. My concern would have been if if it puts too much paint in the panel lines and doesn't work appropriately, but it looks to be filling in pretty quickly. So, and besides, it'd be an opportunity to showcase, hey, you don't have to use the Tamiya stuff. There's other things you can use too. Jorge Raposo, welcome. The Switzerland guy. Where are you originally from, though? Spain, Portugal. What is your country of origin? As people told me when I went to Spain, oh, you're going to your country of origin. I am. I mean, you know, my great-grandfather came from there, but still my country of origin. I was looking through decals for the ME-110, and I saw there was an ME-110. They make Swiss decals for the ME-110. And, you know, the Swiss were, I don't know about, let me not use notorious, because the Switzerland and notorious probably is a bad example. But if people flew over their airspace, they shot them down. You know, and they're like, they took over their planes. So there's like Swiss Messerschmitts and Swiss P-51s. You know. You were born here in Switzerland. My mother's from Portugal. Your father is Swiss. I thought it that last name seemed it seemed more Portuguese than Spanish. Okay, well, you're my half cousin, once removed. I take it you like it there. I probably would like Switzerland. Probably everything's really orderly. Everything's clean, right? I really like Spain, like a lot. Like it almost was disturbing how much I liked it. Here you have the Luftwaffe. Oh, you still call it that? Makes sense. I know they have a bunch of different languages in Switzerland: Italian, French, German. I think the German one is the stronger one, isn't it? But yeah, there's like captured P-51s and captured 110s. You would think that like people would get angry that like, you know, maybe not the Germans, because the Germans are already fighting the whole damn world other than the Japanese. They're fighting everybody in the whole world except the Japanese. They don't need to pick any more fights. But like the U.S. probably never said, hey, you're going to give us that P-51 back, or, you know, might have like a flight of B-17s that, you know, I don't know, accidentally like bomb Zurich or something like that. I guess they didn't do that. I'm pretty sure that if they were interned, they were treated pretty good. I mean, I could think of a lot worse places to be interned than in Switzerland. You made a deal to buy the new F-35 jets. I miss the days when everybody had their own equipment. It's just boring it makes me less likely to build modern stuff, because everybody has their own. You know, everybody's using the F-35. Like, okay, that's fine. It's not that, you know, we don't want you using it. It's just that it's just kind of boring. From a modeling aspect. But these defense companies want to keep making war equipment. They don't want to go back to building refrigerators. You know, the people that were, I want to say the people that were building, of course, they don't build a whole lot of these anymore, but sewing machines ended up making weapons then. I mean, that's like, you know, go back to making your sewing machines. Uh-oh, we didn't glue this antenna on. It gets an antenna over here. I don't think it broke off. We'll glue it on later. We make mistakes here all the time. We ad lib what we have to do. Try to be competent, but unfortunately we're human. We have to buy weapons to spend the money. You speak 4 languages, Switzerland: German, French, Italian, and Romanic. Romanic. Huh. Never heard of that one. I always have something Swiss on me. I like the Swiss Army watches. Of course, I like the older ones. So I bought, I don't know, 5 or 6 or maybe even more than that on eBay. Older models, $100 ones they don't make anymore, and refurb them. Well, I put batteries in them and shit. I mean, it's not exactly, I'm not like a watchmaker or something, but I'm a big fan of those. I don't want anything other than those. I just like the styling of them. Romanich is a mix of French and Latin. Huh. I've never heard of that. Cool. It's funny how different countries are known for different things. Like if somebody says, Sweden, you're like, oh, IKEA. Switzerland would be like Toblerone, Ricola, the watches, and Sig. That's it. That's those 4 things. That's Switzerland for me, for us, stupid outsiders. It's the original language of Switzerland. Huh. I have some Swiss troops. Ended up in a box. Swiss pikemen. From my French ordonnance. Still a little sad that most of my views end up being from DBA videos, even though I don't have any new DBA stuff. Your mate's dad drove Hetzers in the Swiss Army. What were they called? They called like S11 or something like that. Hetzer gonna Hetz. Welcome back, Jeffrey. We will lose Toblerone. What? It will start to be made in Germany and without the image of the mountain on the packaging. Sons of bitches. Those frickin' Germans. Can't they just stick to beer? They already got those, they already got the gummy bears. Which when you buy those, I don't buy them very often. You gotta make sure they're made in Germany. Because if they're made in Turkey, they don't taste the same. And somebody told me, it's like, oh, that's because you have to use all halal ingredients. I said, okay, well, if they don't taste like they're supposed to. Bloody Germans. I've mentioned that I wouldn't mind doing Poland. I wouldn't mind doing 1939 Poland, except I'm not doing German tanks with Swiss crosses on them. It just looks wrong. I don't care if that's what they used. It looks wrong. You have to explain to every single passerby. It doesn't look right. So if I did Poland 1939, the Germans are going to get their crosses like they were in France. Leave the white crosses for the Swiss. Is nothing sacred, Best answer of the week? Yeah, let them stick to beer. I mean, they're good at that. That and nonviolent games. And actually, war movies. I've seen, I think, only 3 German war movies, and all 3 of them are good. Now, I'm sure they probably make crappy war movies, but I actually started watching another one, but it was black and white, and I didn't finish it because I'm not going to watch a black and white war movie. Might as well just watch war footage at that point. But Das Boot, the Stalingrad movie from 1993, and I guess technically it's not a movie, or it's three, depending on how you want to look at it. The oh man, what's it called? The one with the one with the teenagers. I can't remember what it's called. The little mini series. It's three of them. Generation War. Yeah, those three are excellent. So I'm kind of, and I say this when I say, hey, I'm ignorant about the Pacific War, I'm ignorant about modern aircraft, or I'm ignorant from the standpoint of like war gamer ignorant, right? Because if I don't play something in a war game, I have no responsibility to be, like be a nerd about it, right? So like I don't really know about modern warfare unless it was something that I like to call full to gap stuff. And that's stuff that we used to game in the late 80s before Gorby ruined everything, right? So like I know like 80s kind of Soviet stuff and US stuff and NATO things and that. But like what people are using now, I have a better clue than people on the street, but that's not saying anything. But so modern aircraft I'm not really in touch with. So I'm surfing photos of something. I was looking for aircraft or whatever, and I came across the marquees that the Portuguese Air Force, I think it was the Air Force, used on the side of the fuselage on their planes. It's awesome. It's like the cross of one of their knightly orders. I want to say it's Avis. I want to say that Portugal has Avis. It's not Alcantara. But anyways, they have this cute little cross with the ends thing. I was like, that looks pretty good. That might be a good modern aircraft to do. But like, what am I going to do with that? Most food made in the UK and Europe is automatically halal and vegan. Is it? Well, that ham we had in Spain wasn't. No to both of them. Vegan. I couldn't tell you what halal is because I haven't had enough of it. But I can tell you I'm not a vegan fan. I don't, I'm fine with not killing animals, right? Like I don't want to be like, I eat too many vegetables to go like, you look yummy. Boom, I mean, I'd let somebody else do that for me. But, as I like to say, vegan, I don't care if the cow gets a little bit of pleasure. Milk that cow, man. I like that cheese. A German joke. What was the name of that German guy who made me lose my mind? Alzheimer. Yeah, you could pretty much substitute anything for the Maria on there. Oh man, good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, we have the fan. Ah, yeah. Okay, just needs some air circulation. Air circulation. Is over in the Middle East. I think this is going to look fantabulous. And I was going to dry brush this anyway, so thin dry brushing. I got that shit down. Airbrushing, if I just make something presentable, that's like a minor miracle. Okay, Jeffrey, so I know you've heard me talk about this. Everybody and their mother recommended me to watch um, The Duelists. Everybody. And I tried to get my daughter to watch it, and she was not interested. So I started watching a little bit of it this morning, I think, or at lunchtime, or both, trying to get through it. And I'm glad I didn't make her watch it because it's just kind of weird. I'm just trying to figure out what the purpose of it is. It's entertaining. We'll get to the end of it, but like, first I was like, man, this like got into the action really quick. I'm like, that's cool. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now what's the purpose of this? I'm not going to be tempted to paint any hussars. Let's put it that way. So that's good. But what I'm saying is, most of my views still are from the DBA battles, which I guess is fine. I said I wasn't going to take them down there. Just don't ask me to do more. I've done all I can do for that. I did all I could do to promote that rule set, and still can't get anybody to play it. As we are Swiss, we're always getting into trouble with the Germans. When you're going over every single line, you're enjoying the details that whoever made this or designed it put there for you. Good to see you working through Ridley Scott's Over. Yeah, well, I gotta watch Gladiator 2 again because the daughter's here. She wants to see it. It wasn't as bad as everybody made it out to believe. Napoleon was horrendously bad. The only person I would recommend people to watch Napoleon is people that are blind and deaf. That way you don't have to see that he doesn't look like Napoleon or hear the horrible dialogue. Or recommend it to somebody who you just, like, I don't like that guy. I think you should waste 3 hours. Hey, you should watch this movie. It's great. Napoleon is one of those movies that, everybody's like, man, they should make a movie about so-and-so. After you watch that, like, Hollywood shouldn't make any more movies about historical figures for risk of having something else like that. And I remember people like, remember the old, who's the cokehead dude? That did the, who's the cokehead dude? I'm the cokehead dude. No, I mean the powdered coke. Oliver Stone's Alexander. Everybody, man, Oliver Stone's Alexander is terrible. It is a work of art compared to Napoleon. And I think the first Gladiator is incredible. I mean, sure, it's not a real story, okay? I got it, right? I'm not going to learn my history from that, but that first one's excellent. I mean, that's as good as Hollywood's ever going to be able to do. You give them, hey, do this. It's a historical thing. Cool. Well, why don't we twist it into, just goes downhill. Cosmia, welcome back. Still paying? No, I went to work. I went to work. Thanks for coming by. This is going to take several sessions, but this is going to look superb. But you can't just like slosh black on it and be like, okay, now we'll dry brush over it. Okay, now, oh, it doesn't look that good. Yeah, man, you gotta like, you gotta take your time. The 4-hour version makes more sense. Just skip through the battle scenes. Well, the movie made sense to me. It's not like I don't know who Napoleon is, but there's nothing in that movie that people that didn't know anything about Napoleon would go, oh, so that's what made him a great military commander. Nothing. You'd be like, who's this ass clown that's henpecked all the time? And they show him in battle and he's charging. I'm not a Napoleon expert, but I'm going to guess that Napoleon never charged into combat. I mean, it'd be stupid for him to do that. You know? How long have I been working? 40 minutes or so? This is probably going to take, I don't know, if I had to guess how many hours, 20 hours maybe? I found something really cool today. AK makes some pencils that are, I don't know how they are. They make some pencils that I guess are some water-based type paint. And so they're just like regular pencils. And you can use them to put, I saw one that was aluminum. I'm like, that would be handy. But I'm like, I could do that with this. Like, I can handle small things with paintbrushes. We got lots of experience in that. So, it's one of those things that if you find one in a store, they're like $2. But if you Amazon them, they're like 14. Because, you gotta factor that shipping in. They're not going to bring it to your house for nothing, You read the Manfredi trilogy of books that Alexander film is based on really got me reading deeply about the history. Okay, Jeffrey, I haven't asked you this. So who's the better commander, Alexander or Hannibal? The question of questions. We had this discussion at the last convention with somebody who had the polar opposite opinion that Mitch and I did. And he's wrong. I'm taking that one to the grave. I'm taking that one to the grave. It's a shame that Ridley Scott didn't. What did I miss? Uh-oh. Something disappeared. I saw it and then disappeared. all this attention to detail pays off in the end. If you want it to, you know. Hannibal better. Alexander better strategist. I think, here's the difference. Here's the difference. How good would Alexander be? And I'm not saying Alexander sucks. Don't get me wrong, but Alexander got a hand. I mean, how good would Alexander be if he didn't have his daddy create the army for him? And, and all of the junior officers that were in his army that pulled their weight. There's no doubt about it that he had a cadre of people that were incredible. And then he got people that were motivated to fight for him. But then you got the whole, did he really think he was a god? Was he full of shit? Was he drinking too much wine? All that kind of crap. But I'm not saying he was a bad commander, but he definitely pulled, he was, Alexander did some Rommel stuff, okay? And I don't think Rommel is the bee's knees because he took some serious freaking risks that almost turned out bad for him. And in some occasions did. Now, Alexander just got lucky, and he was fighting the Persians, which the problem with the Persians is that the Persians had a big empire, but the Persians are almost like their own worst enemy. Like, I don't really think that, they had like, the worst thing you could happen to be a Persian, whatever the hell it was called, whatever the king of kings is, to have multiple sons. Because as soon as you got multiple sons, they're going to fight amongst each other and weaken and every time that happens, there's a lot of murdering there at the top, and you end up weakening the kingdom every time it happens, Napoleon is more about the relationship with Josephine. That's not what I want to go see the movie for. I want to see the movie to see, stuff in action, But it took somebody, it's got to take somebody special to, first of all, you're fighting the Romans, which are a hard nut to crack, as we know, because they just don't know when to give up. I mean, the Romans just, they're proud as shit. At least at that time period, they were like, we're just not going to give up. Screw you, we're not giving up. They didn't give up under Paris, and they didn't give up under Hannibal. And, but he had to mold like this army that had nothing in common with each other. Alexander's basically an army that's all Greekish people. Now, eventually he started dabbling and adding this, that, and the other, but that's not until the very end. You got these Greekish guys that have kind of a common thread. Hannibal's got guys from Gaul, guys from Spain. None of them talk to each other. They can't communicate. You got like the other guy's going. They can't speak a language. He's like the common thread that connects all these guys. He's got. Man, I got to talk about this ancient stuff. I'm just forgetting. You got Numidian cavalry. He's got all these guys that he can mold into working this Swiss Army knife of different collaborations, and somehow gets them to work with each other and not like kill each other at the first stand, So that alone, and he's got very few people to count on. At least it seems like he's got very few people to count on. And if he does, they're all called Hanno or Hasdrubal. There's like 50 different Hasdrubals and 50 different Hannos, and you can't keep all that stuff straight. And I'm no Carthaginian fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of the Carthaginians, but I've read lots of stuff about him, and it's amazing that yes, he didn't conquer Rome and he didn't do all this stuff, but he was in Rome's backwater for 15 fucking years, not being supplied by the main country. Like, that's amazing in and of itself. 。 dad just say, Vale, and Mealy, come brush teeth. And I was right there next to him. Okay. But was Alexander inspirational? Sure. Did he pussyfoot around and sit in the back? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, he definitely had balls of steel. There's no doubt about that. But now, how would Alexander have done against Rome? They wouldn't have fallen like the Persians. Now, what army would you rather fight in? Alexander's, no doubt about it. Because, you know, I'm not sacrificing my own child for luck in a battle. Like that Carthaginian mentality just doesn't work with me. Okay, that just like, you know, that just doesn't work. I get it that, you know, you want to pay back the Romans. I'm all for that, right? Whatever reasoning you have there, you know, you've got the vendetta against them. Okay, that works, but and I don't know that Hannibal did that himself. I didn't read anything where it's like, you know, he went to, actually, did he have kids? I think he probably had a couple kids. But, the Romans of those three, Carthaginians, Alexander, or the Romans could function better without an Alexander or a Hannibal. And even when they had a poor commander, yeah, they had problems that were handed to them, but they were more resilient. Their system was definitely more resilient than any of the other two. I mean, it's not even close. The Ulfman cometh. Good evening, Ulfie. Well, Jeffrey, most people are in our camp. And I'm not saying Alexander isn't the top 5. Agent's commander, he's probably top 3. I just don't think he's number 1. I don't think he's number 1. And I'm not a Julius Caesar fan. I'm not, I don't think Julius Caesar sucks, but, you know, I'm not a Julius Caesar fan. Yeah. Well, there's a couple things I have a problem with, and I know I'm looking at it from a modern viewpoint, but why would you sacrifice a living thing to a god? Like, what makes you think that that's a good idea? Maybe the god's going to be upset with you because you're basically killing one of his creations. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, I'm like, we're here to worship you, whoever you are, right? So we're going to kill this beautiful deer in your honor. He's like, that was my favorite pet. You bunch of asshole, you know, lightning, thunder, bring them down. I'm like, that's like a bad idea, right? Rome is the great adapter. Rome is the great adapter. Like, hey, we just got conquering you guys. Why don't you like join our army and we'll use some of your guys as auxiliaries? And they weren't afraid of like using other people's stuff. That's more that can be said for a lot of people. I'm talking about Republic Rome, right? Because Imperial Rome, you got people and I'm not saying that the Romans were, you know, the best examples of the human beings ever on this earth, but The Republic Romes are very different. The Republic Roman period very different than the Imperial one. The Imperial one, you've got guys that are in charge that are kind of like the freaking Nazis in the 1930s. You know, you're like basically you got all these misfits running shit with power. You know, you got like people like Goebbels and shit like that are just like these misfits that are like just in charge. I'm not saying weren't people like that earlier. I'm just like the imperial thing is all basically all that period, all that very very common of that. Very strange you're going to run into people that are you got these court people that are just doing courty stuff and they're just they're pulling all the strings and they're not competent, you know. Yeah, there's something to be said for people like the Persians that are like, look, believe in whatever the hell you want. We just want your tax revenue, you know. Like I don't care. Oh, you want to think the sky's yellow? That's fine. Just break, just pay taxes, you know. You just made Malinda habanero beef pot pie. Hold on, I just got a news flash that there's some girl named Melinda that's been missing in Michigan. She wouldn't be in your pie, would she? Why Melinda? All right, so this is what happens when I do this. I get a little bored. I'm like, okay, enough of that. Let's flip to the other side and see what that looks like. So we're going to do something. We're going to start with the tail over here. The Carthaginians returned to sacrifices towards the end as Rome besieged Carthage. How'd that work out for them? The sacrifice the wrong people. Whoops. Yeah, you don't sacrifice your own kids. I don't think you should sacrifice any kids, but if you do, make sure it's the kids of your enemy, not your own people. They were going to make a Hannibal movie with Denzel. I guess they gave up on that. Didn't care for him in Gladiator 2. And the reason why I didn't care for him in Gladiator 2 is he made no attempt to do an accent. He sounded like Denzel. Like, come on, dude. You're a better actor than that. He was fine in it other than that. An actor not being able to do a proper accent is like me calling myself a painter and I'm using Crayola crayons on top of this. Like, come on, dude. That's what you do. All right. I gotta go to the little boy's room. I'll be right back. Yum yum. I haven't had dinner yet, on purpose. I'm gonna wait until later. If I eat too early, then I get hungry, and then I eat the house. And I'm really good at that. I'm actually surprised that after putting the primer down, that there's this much of a gap on it. Because there's 2 layers of paint, because, you know, I painted it the wrong color first. I misread the instructions that weren't in color. I don't know, maybe it turned out better because I did that. But I was worried about maybe these panel lines being obscured, but that has not been the case. I did watch a video that was on ScaleMates. I actually didn't know that ScaleMates had videos. But this guy was a link to this video that this guy did. I didn't listen to it. I watched it. And I'm sure he probably explained stuff in there in the video. But it was a review and a build and paint review that the guy did on that little Soviet I-15 BIS that I have. Made by ICM, IMC, IBC. No, it's not the root beer. ICM. I think ICM. That I built the other day. That I struggled with building the other day. It was definitely a challenging kit. And the guy went and did something really unique. He spent way too much time on that piece of shit model. And he has this area on the wing where he takes little pieces of tape and puts little strips of it and then airbrushes it, so when he pulls it off, it looks like there's a skeleton underneath the airframe. The airframe of the skeleton is underneath there. And it looks really good, but I'm sitting here going, man, I thought I took a long freaking time. That takes an inordinate amount of time to do that. It's like, I won't be doing that, okay? I will not be doing that route. Did I find those Vallejo guides online, or would you like me to see if I can send higher res? No, they're fine. Higher res. I tell you one thing though. If anybody complains about, I can't find the right color for this tank. Colors of tanks is a piece of cake. Colors of aircraft is a massive pain in the ass. Massive pain in the ass. Because I'm like, I don't need to buy colors. Like, I would if I could just go to the store and get them, but I don't. Let's use the Vallejo stuff. We got that Kuram guy who's a wizard. By the way, have you been using his formula? That guy's a wizard, man. Like, I'm fine airbrushing. This is all airbrushed with Vallejo. Guess what? No spittle, no jams, nothing happened with this. Just smooth as butter. Spraying. But man, trying to get the freaking colors right, it's a pain in the butt. And maybe it's the same thing with armor, but I've just never experienced it. Man, you go like that walrus I have, and you go and look at the paint guide that they use. Well, you need to use this Humbrol color, and this Humbrol color, you can go somewhere and see what its equivalent is, and then you go and they actually mix it. There's not an equivalent. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a pain. I mean, I've got every Vallejo color. I can get close. I get close enough for me. All right, looks like we got this wing done. Let's go ahead and do the tail section. Like the local Hobby Lobby, they actually make a Vallejo Air set for the China Burma India Theater. Right? Okay, well that's perfect for this. But I'm like, do I really want to go down there and get it? I'm like, I've already got colors that'll work. Or they'll work close enough for me. Because remember, I'm going to take the color, I'm going to give it that brown wash, I'm going to dry brush the color again, and I'm going to weather it with, probably not Iraqi sand, but the other sand. I don't know. We're gonna tinker with the color, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Because even if I get the perfect color, I'm still gonna weather it. It's not gonna look exactly right. So, I don't like continually throwing money at shit. So sometimes you have to be happy. Like I said, sometimes you got to be happy with what you have, not with what you don't have. But I would totally build this model again. There's nothing wrong with this model. The color instructions suck. Like, I need to take my glasses off to see where the color partition line was. That's my own fault, but I'm really tempted to do some Japanese infantry next. And I know why I'm tempted to do it. Because of that stupid cards game, which is a dumbass freaking game. But it has really good art. It has really inspirational artwork in it. It's just like a Magic the Gathering, what's that thing? Hearthstone type thing you could play on your phone. But the cards have this beautiful artwork. Really, really, I mean, most of the artwork looks like propaganda posters, but it's really, really well done. Man, I'm reading that book about Sicily. You think there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about North Africa, about Tunisia? There's a lot of stuff I really don't know about Sicily. Stuff I really don't know. Like German tanks, like busting out to the bridgeheads and shooting at folks on the beaches until they called in, the light cruisers with 15 6-inch guns. Like, whoops. That'll give you a headache. I was reading the account like Italian force dive bombed the American force. Like what? Like it's just so weird when I think of just the Western Allies. I just think that when they showed up in force, there's basically they had complete air superiority, and that just wasn't the case. Well, that just made everything a lot more interesting than just being some kind of cakewalk. But there's some stuff you don't even think about. You just kind of like, just don't put two and two together. The physical size of aircraft compared to tanks, the depth that some shipwrecks are at. You just think, oh, okay, well, they sank this battleship or whatever. Okay, it must be in like really, really deep. I didn't realize that Force Z, Prince of Wales, and Repulse were sunk so shallow that divers came in and desecrated the wrecks. They like pulled shit off of them. You know, it's basically if you took those two battleships and you put them and you tipped them on their end, only half of them would be covered by water. That's shallow as shit. That's shallow as shit. Only like in 300 feet of water or something like that. I just figured, okay, well, there's so much far off the shore. You just have this perception that if you're tens of miles off the shore, the depth's got to be really deep, and that just isn't the case. Well, that's isn't the case here in the Gulf. You could go out tens of miles, and the depth is only 30, 60 feet, something like that. It's really pretty shallow from the standpoint of a shipwreck. You're like you can't touch bottom. It's not that shallow, but things like that, just stuff you don't even think about. That one episode that I watched on that show that was about the Battle of Jutland, and they sucked all the water out, and it's on a lot of the battle is on like a rise, and it's lots of it is under 100 feet deep, and you're like, man, that's really freaking shallow. Stuff you don't think about, or stuff I don't think about. So I do enjoy doing the American stuff only because of the standpoint that people just don't think they're interesting enough. Not that I'm like, yeah, go America, because that's when I grew up, that's all there was. Like you had Green Army men. You didn't have Army men for other countries. You didn't have just being able to throw the Brits in stuff is just a breath of fresh air. It's like you got Green Army guys beating up on Green Army guys. You go into Hobby Lobby now, they got a model of a Sherman and the Walker Jeffrey's Walker Bulldog is there, and and a patent, an M48 patent, and like nothing for anybody else they would fight. It's almost like old school, America. But you go to any place else, and it's like Germans, Germans, Germans with a side of Germans and more Germans. Like, listen, you got to have stuff from both sides. What about the commie bastards? Nobody gives a shit about them. Everybody's stuff is interesting. I could see a minor power like Italy, like nobody's got an Italian aircraft or something. Okay, that's a minor power. There's no French, but like, dude, there's got to be like Germans, British, Soviets, Japanese. You look at some of the ship makers, like Hasegawa. Hasegawa makes ships. They're all Japanese. I mean, they might make I think they make like South Dakota and Alabama or whatever. For whatever reason, they make those 2 battleships. Which, I actually like those squat little bastards. I like them better than the North Carolina class, the little compact looking guys. But anyways, that's the only thing that they make. They might make 1 destroyer model or 2 or something like that, but that's it. Almost like on a whim. Now, I don't know why that is. I don't know why they're like, oh, we just make Japanese ships. Well, that's what sells. I don't know anybody who like does ships. If you're into World War II ships and you're not in Japan, maybe it's a Japanese thing, and you don't live in Japan, odds are the Japanese aren't your first choice. Like, I've been to ships my whole life, and for me, it's always that Battle of Atlantic. And then after that, it's the Med. Because I try getting away from the aircraft carriers. Like, the aircraft carriers are just like bad news for ship lovers. You got ships and you got aircraft carriers. I'm not saying aircraft carriers are a bad design or anything. I'm just saying that they're not very exciting. They don't excite me. Didn't say they weren't important, but everybody go to bed? What? Nope. Yeah, this is going to take several nights of getting all this, the black wash where it needs to go. The dry brush will be like a 1-day affair. That's easy. You got to get this stuff from where it needs to go. And it's looking pretty good. Let me give you a shot of that. And yeah, we got a couple of overage. But that'll all be solved with dry brushing. Looks kind of crude. It won't when we're done. And the beauty of it is this is painted with Vallejo, which means, as far as I'm concerned, there's no paint I have that is better for dry brushing than Vallejo. So when you get to the dry brushing stage, putting the same color back on it is going to be, easy peasy. Let me check one thing. So I came across something that I don't need. And I didn't realize they actually made this. So Spitfires, there's a Spitfire waiting in the wings. Everybody would be excited about a Spitfire, except that one guy doesn't like Spitfires. Well, screw him. He's just not a Spitfire liker. He can just go fly a kite. They make masking sets for Spitfires. Now, I won't need one of those. For those you guys that wouldn't be familiar with this, and I would have been one of these people as well, until a few months ago when I looked into it, Spitfires are basically painted in a couple different schemes as far as the camouflage goes. Like, you can't just like, here, have these colors, have fun with it, right? This isn't, you know, this isn't a German Panzer in 1943 or 44 or 45 where you can just paint it however you want, whatever colors you want, right? They followed actual schemes, and there were, as far as I can tell, there were rubber mats that were done in the factory, and then they would spray those colors. Not only were the colors specific colors, but the patterns were specific patterns. So on the Spitfires, we're talking specifically Spitfire Mark 1s, and maybe other ones as well, but mine's a Spitfire Mark 1. It's only going to come in two different flavors, either the A pattern or the B pattern. And literally everything on it is in that pattern. You know, you've got the we'll call it forest green and earth color. So a green and a brown. And the scheme is a certain way. And the way it's supposed to work, even number serial numbered Spitfires are a certain pattern, and then odd number Spitfire serial number ones are a different pattern. So you'd have a mixture of those two. So if you had a whole squadron of Spitfires in Battle of Britain, assuming there's no exceptions to the rule, and some of these rules do have exceptions, the Spitfires would all be in two different patterns, like the whole thing. You could have 50 planes, and they would all be of two different flavors, which is kind of weird, but that's just how they decided to do it. And then later on, I don't know if it was on the Spitfire ones or whatever, I have to look, they said, you know what, this pattern is so much of a pain in the ass. We're just going to do this other pattern. They're all going to be Bs, or they're all going to be As, and I forget exactly which one it was. I read it, I found the article, didn't pay too much attention to it, because I'm not painting Spitfires right now. But, you know, if you were going to do a bunch of Spitfires for Battle of Britain, you know, you're going to do 9 of them, and you want to do them realistically, they're only going to be two different patterns, an A or a B. That's it. So they make maskings for that, and I'm like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just like. First of all, they're hard edge, or they're hard. At this scale, they're going to be hard edge because you airbrush them. So what I'm going to do, and it's one of the things I wanted to look at is, okay, I go and paint this forest green, or I forget exactly what the color is called, the forest green and flat earth thing. Like, which one was painted first, right? Because I want to airbrush one color, and I'm going to hand paint the other, you know, and then I'm going to put with a pencil. I'm probably not even going to use a pencil. I could probably do it with this, and put the lines where they're supposed to go, and then fill that area in the green or the brown, depending on which one got painted first. And from what I can tell, it was flat earth. It was overall flat earth, and then they put the green on top of that. So that's what I plan on doing, but I don't plan on using masks. But I'll plan on using the cues of all that stuff. Now, the cool thing about planes is planes have all these different lines and stuff on there. So it's almost like drawing something on graph paper. So if you look at this pattern, you're like, all right, it goes over this little area here. And I'm sure that there is slight variations. Like if somebody went through the thing on there to spray it at the factory, they didn't line it up perfectly, right? Like if you're ever trying to like cut like a perfect line and you're like off by a little bit, there's slight variations that just in trying to do it correctly or as accurate as you can will kind of make up for those little variations you have on there. But they have all these panel lines and stuff, so you can go, okay, this kind of goes in between that thing, then comes over this way. You've got lots of little things to guide you. So I think it would be really easy to just hand paint this. I don't understand why they have to make an actual, you know, yeah, this is set A. This is the Spitfire A. I believe mine came with B. The actual pattern on it is B. But anyhow, we'll get to the Spitfire. All these Spitfire fans can come out of the woodwork. I'm a Spitfire fan. I'm just not a huge fan of the 5 because it's got a big chin like this, you know. So you need a tiger shark mouth to hide that big Habsburg chin. So there's no point in putting a Habsburg chin on a Spitfire. Ruins the appearance. Although I do like the long 20s. The long 20s coming out of the wings are sweet. But we'll have to find a cheap Spitfire and make it crash too. Have a crash Spitfire. Oh, what are you doing crashing a Spitfire? So well, you got to build one that's in good shape first. Can't start just crashing shit. We'll leave that for the Nazi planes. But I am curious to see how this will turn out because I really like the way this thing turned out. But that's a destroyed, and it's actually not completely done yet. But that's a destroyed plane. So what's one in good shape, like in running order, look like from me? Well, we're gonna all find out together. And this is what I plan on doing with the P-47 as well. You know, we'll paint it all aluminum or whatever, and then we'll come in and tinker the lines, and when we dry brush back over it, the lines aren't going to be so prominent because I don't want them to be like invisible, but I don't want them to be like it's leaking oil out of every single, you know, because they're supposed to be flush against each other. But you know, you're making a miniature. You need to exaggerate things so you can see it at a distance. You know, if that's the look you want, which that is the look I want. You know, I have an old book by Verlinden. Verlinden was the gold standard back when I did models. In the late 80s, early 90s, that was the gold standard. Like, if you could do Verlinden, like, there's nobody better than Verlinden. You know, he was the best painter out there. I looked at his stuff, and I'm like, his stuff isn't as impressive anymore because it looks too realistic. And I prefer a less realistic look because I want the panel lines and stuff to be a little bit more exaggerated so you can see them. You know, you take a real P-47 or a real plane or whatever, or a real tank, it doesn't look as good to me as some of the miniatures that I painted because I'm exaggerating the stains, I'm exaggerating the edges, because all that stuff needs to stand out. I've seen real Shermans face to face. They don't look as good as the Shermans I paint. Not to me. You know, so does that mean my Shermans are unrealistic looking? Probably. But you need to be able to see them across the tabletop. And this is, I think this is a lot quicker than sitting there and putting lines down and have to come and wipe that stuff down. We're not wiping any of this down. It's going to be on a flat spot where it shouldn't be in, and when we go and dry brush this color over it, it'll take care of itself. Well, I think I've thoroughly bored everybody. Oh well, shit happens. What is it? Yeah. It's getting close to quitting time anyways. Meanwhile, where the hell is Marcus? I even sent him a message on Facebook Messenger. He didn't respond. I hope he's okay. He's probably not having a good time. I do remember that when I'm having a bad day, it said, well, at least I'm not making I'm not a barista in California. Trying to get his business taken off. We're out of everything. Yeah, I'm surprised with 3 layers of paint that these panel lines, that the paint takes to the panel lines as well as it does. Well, that's just proof that I sprayed them thin, because this did not have really thick panel lines. The Airfix ones do. And we did the same thing with the 109 as we did here. The problem is that this has a lot more panel lines and they're sunken as opposed to raised. But I didn't want to try that. I don't want to try to ruin, quote unquote, ruin a model by wrecking it that was of high quality. Here's the other thing, and this is a big one. This dark tone lasts a hell of a lot longer than the Nuln Oil, because the Nuln Oil, because of how you apply it, I end up wasting more than I use. Here, you just put, well, I'm still wasting some, but it just seems like, especially if I'm cutting it down, I can do a lot more with this stuff than I can with the Nuln Oil. I actually went to the store the other day when I was getting some metallics. I'm like, let me pick up more of this stuff, since I found out this stuff is pretty amazing. And they were out of this color. Typical restock problem at some of these stores. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and sign off for this evening. Thanks for stopping by. And how long are we on here? An hour and a half.